Good afternoon. Give people a chance to connect and join our meeting here.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, Mindy. Hi, Brandy. And I don't recognize, is it Julia? Okay. Great. Thanks for joining us. We'll do more introductions here in a minute. Hi, Liz.
Hi.
I think we're missing Tom and Terrence, right? Wendy. And again, not everyone can join every meeting, but I just want to.
I have to confess, I forgot to do my homework by reading through the SAMHSA article.
That's okay. You have plenty. You still have lots of time. There's no time limit on that. You're gonna know me, Mindy. I give people lots of grace.
Yeah, I do know that.
I don't always do things when I'm supposed to.
I'd like to, if I may.
Uh-huh.
Okay, may not.
Oh, you can. What you want to say?
Your microphone's off. We can't hear you.
Yeah, it's definitely I wonder if I can unmute you. I can't.
Unmute me.
Oh, there you go.
My name is Juliana. I've been invited to this. I don't know anything about it yet, so I'm just watching. And
Great.
When I'm ready to introduce myself, I will.
Awesome.
Apologies. This is.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call the meeting to order. I'm going to read the statement that I'm supposed to read. Where's my statement, Vanessa? I thought it was on there. Let me see. Vanessa keeps me honest here.
So, Liz, I have a question. Will there be a few moments for me to talk outside the agenda?
So we can talk about items for future meetings under number 5.
Okay, thank you. Good.
So Vanessa, did you hear me say I don't know where the statement is?
Well, since we've heard it before, can we pretend that we just heard it?
That's a good idea, but this is being recorded. So hold on a second. Let me find the last.
I just sent it to you.
You just sent it to me. God bless you. Thank you. All right. So I usually lived most of my life under those you can say I did it, but didn't really do it, Mindy. But now that I got a real job, I can't do that. So hi, Tom. Glad you joined us, Wendy. So I just called the meeting to order. The Commission on Equitable Housing and Development Permanent Supportive Housing Subcommittee has now commenced. It is October 14th. It is 4:05 p.m. The meeting is being held virtually due to COVID-19 to allow for social distancing and protect the public health. As we continue our efforts in meeting remotely, we ask all commissioners and guests to mute yourselves until called upon to speak to avoid feedback and background noise. For those who have dialed in using the call-in number to unmute to speak, dial *6 on your phone. Also, prior to speaking, please announce who you are to identify yourself. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. We ask that you only use the chat function to request to speak or to announce you are leaving the meeting so that we can track quorum. Also, in order to comply with the state open meeting law, Attendance and votes will be done by way of roll call using audio, not by using the chat function. So hopefully that covers the official business. I'm going to do roll call, and actually I'm just going to go around and ask you each to say your name and how you're, who you represent, or if you're a commission member. So I'll start. I'm Liz Morales. I'm the Director for Housing and Community Development for the City of Tucson. I'm also chairing this committee, the subcommittee. So I'm going to ask Mindy to introduce herself.
My name is Mindy Bernstein. I am on the commission, voting member for the Commission of Equitable and Fair Housing, and so happy to be on this subcommittee.
Thank you. And then I'll turn it to Liz.
Hi, this is Liz Wolshin. I am a voting member on the Commission for Equitable Housing and Development.
Great. Tom?
Hello, I'm Tom Litwicky, and I serve as CEO for OPCS, a nonprofit here in Tucson.
Thank you. Wendy?
Good afternoon. I'm Wendy Asher. I'm a member of the commission. I'm a non-voting member.
Hi, Wendy. And then I'm going to ask some of the staff, and then I'm going to ask Juliana to introduce herself. Brandy?
Brandy Champion, Housing First Program Director, newly appointed, might I add. And I am here to listen and learn.
And be part of this subcommittee.
Yes.
The nice thing with the subcommittee, you don't have to be on the commission to be on the subcommittee. So if you're on here and you commit to it, you can all be subcommittee members. So that's one thing I forgot to mention. Vanessa?
Hi, I'm Vanessa Gonzalez and I work for Housing and Community Development.
Thank you. And Juliana, I know you just told us your name, but is there anything you would like to add?
There we go. My name is Juliana Donnelly. I'm just a member of the community. I'm not on any commissions or anything. I'm just learning a little bit about this.
Great. Well, welcome, and hope you learn something new about what we're doing here with the commission on, and we say CEHD because otherwise it's a very long name. But we're going to, I wanted to finalize the purpose of the subcommittee. We had talked about it last week. It's in our minutes. Let me, does anyone need a copy of did you get the invite that had the attachments, Juliana? Okay, good. So I want to just make sure. So in that, I think in the minutes is where we had our purpose.
Liz,
Yes.
sorry, I do need to make a change to the agenda because we forgot to add to approve the meeting minutes from last.
Thank you.
So I'll add that in.
Okay, so can we do that now? Since we have the minutes, at least I have the minutes open. Has
Yeah.
everyone had a chance to review the minutes?
Yep.
Yeah.
Can I get a motion to approve?
I actually have a correction to the minutes.
Yes.
There on the second page, it says that we watched a video from Salt Lake City, Utah. We had technical issues and we weren't able to watch the video.
Yeah, so what we can say under number 4, a video was provided via attachment for members to review regarding PSH. Does that sound good? Would that correction be
Good
accurate?
to me. Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, with that correction, can I get a motion to approve?
I motion to approve the minutes as corrected.
Thank you. Second? Is there a second? I see Tom saying yes. So all in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. So minutes are accepted and approved. The next item is to talk about the purpose of the subcommittee. We did make some corrections in the last meeting. I'm going to read it out loud, and if there's any additional corrections or suggestions, we can discuss. So I'm just going to read it out loud. Our purpose is to make recommendations on how to expand permanent supportive housing in the city of Tucson. on developing and operating permanent supportive housing for people and families overcoming homelessness, including those with mental illness, substance abuse, and medical or other disabling conditions, and assist residents in obtaining, remaining, and in permanent housing. Encouraging residents to increase skills and or find employment, fostering self-sufficiency and improving self-image and supporting recovery and wellness. Would anyone suggest or want to discuss any changes?
I do.
I have my hand raised to discuss.
Oh, I'm totally blanking on the hands. So we'll go with Liz first and Mindy second.
I think Mindy raised her hand first.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't watching. So Mindy, you want to go first?
Sure. The last sentence of encouraging,
Okay.
I philosophically, I believe that it's not encourage, it's expect. And there's the difference between not just encouraging people, but having an expectation that they will return to the workforce as they are able to. And I think when we have an expectation versus encouraging, it is a little.
So I'll tell you my response to that. And again, this is open discussion. Everyone, we can all have share our thoughts and opinions, and then we can come to a conclusion. My only thought to that, Mindy, is when we talk about permanent supportive housing, all the services are to be voluntary. And so I'm just talking about the general model of permanent supportive housing is that you provide a robust, intensive, a lot of services, including those who want to work, who can work, helping them there. But to me, expectation is kind of passing, overstepping that whole idea of voluntary, letting it be client driven, empowerment by the client to just make a decision on their kind of path. So that's, I totally agree with you in the sense that when we help people and give them good, positive expectations, they usually rise to the occasion. But I'm just afraid that doesn't follow the housing first philosophy, and that's again just my opinion. And now we're just talking about this item on expect. So Liz, did you have a comment on that? And then Tom.
Yeah, so I did want to comment on that phrase. Also, just like a couple term things. We had mentioned last meeting that we were talking about more than just like the category of permanent and supportive housing. So perhaps like housing first, or since we're basing everything that we're doing off of the housing first model, it might be more effective for us to just use one term that is applicable to everything. And thereby, like, we might need to change the name of the subcommittee, and I think we talked about that as well. Also, in terms of, so it states people and family overcoming homelessness, including those with mental illness. I would say people who use drugs, or because substance abuse, like that's not even in the DSM anymore. For people who have substance use disorders. And not all substance use is disordered, but that's aside. And then medical or other disabling conditions. And like, I know disabling conditions by HUD qualifies people for housing, but also substance use doesn't qualify someone for housing. So I think we should like just iron out that sentence maybe a little bit.
So can I put, yeah, can I'm making note. Can we put that one on pause? I think we can. So I hear what you're saying. I think this was actually taken from kind of like a HUD document, but what I'm thinking of is I think it may be outdated, was basically what you're saying as far as some of those terms. So what I'll do is find out what is the right terms based on what you're sharing, and just confirm it against what since some of this is going, not all of it will be HUD type funding, But what we're trying to do is, like you said, be consistent. And I like the idea of putting in housing first more in this. We haven't really mentioned that in this document. But how are you feeling about the term expectation? I mean, encouraging and changing that to expecting.
I do agree with you that like technically all services are voluntary. There are negative outcomes that people live with that are conditions set by the programs, which make it involuntary basically. And I think that instead of saying like encouraging, increasing skills, all that, I would just say wraparound services because it's generalized, it's in the housing first language, and it's harder to argue with.
So what I'm hearing you say is maybe talk, instead of outlining the different types of services, just put it all in a category under wraparound services. Is that what you're saying?
I think that my opinion is just like simplicity. That way, if we don't have an opportunity to discuss those skills and services within our first year or whatever, we're not meeting what our mission says.
Okay. Tom?
Well, this is an interesting conversation. I do agree. To me, it seems like permanent supportive housing could just be permanent housing. Just because HUD has this specific model called permanent supportive housing, whereas permanent housing could be anything could be permanent. The other thing is, I mean, myself, I'm not sure the intention of the last sentence. I could read it as a condition, like we really should, people need to do these things and get better. Or I could read it in a way of it's a recovery model and we encourage this and we know people can get better. We believe they can get better. Personally, I think we could just do without the sentence. I mean, clearly it's really just about housing and we're talking about the housing and wraparound services and those things are important. And unless it's a statement about like, we believe people can become self-sufficient, right? That would be more kind of what I would be thinking versus this almost sounds kind of like, and by golly, you need to do some things. And I don't know that it was intended that way, wherever it came from, but so, yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know if that helps you, Liz.
I think that's real helpful. I think that's definitely up for, for slashing. I like slashing words. So good idea, Tom. Wendy?
Yeah, so I just wanted to reiterate some of the things that have been said, that we want to avoid any implication that there are conditions on providing permanent supportive housing to folks, which is my understanding of what the housing first model really encompasses, that there aren't sanctions, that you don't have to do these things on these dates in order to continue to have the housing provided to you. And anything that we have in the wording that implies otherwise, I'm with you, cut and slash and burn it. You know,
Well,
I don't want to have anything that's misleading in there that could be a problem for participants or for us as a subcommittee later on.
Juliana?
Okay, this isn't about the wording, but as I'm learning, when I'm hearing these great comments, I'm thinking, you don't want to have stipulations, what people need to do. How do you decide who gets in and how long they stay? And there's going to be a waiting list of 5 million people to get in. So that's just a curiosity thing.
Yeah.
Like if you get in there, if you're lucky enough to get one of the 20 spots, let's just say, you just stay there no matter what? I don't know. I guess I just a brief summary on, is there any kind of gatekeeping?
Yeah, so great question. I'll just say, and I'm just as a side note, I'm going to say, Tom, I'm really interested in what you said about PSH versus just permanent housing. So I'm going to challenge you a little bit on that one because I've not heard that before, but that's good stuff because I think it'd be good to make sure we're all in common language here. But in general, Juliana, and I'm going to ask my fellow subcommittee members to jump in. Permanent supportive housing or permanent housing projects that have been done that I'm familiar with, they typically state what the population is. They typically state how they get referrals. So for instance, as a community, we have a coordinated entry system which that means it's through the funding that we get as a community for Pima County and Tucson. We have a regional planning group called Tucson Pima Collaboration and Homelessness. And through that, we get HUD funding, and we're required to create a coordinated entry system. That means anyone that comes into the homeless system, we do an assessment, we support them, find out what their needs are, and then they're referred appropriately to the most appropriate intervention. So some people, based on their, we talked about disabling conditions, chronicity of how long they've been homeless, sometimes can play an impact. So they get prioritized and then referred, and based on, and it's really first come, first serve. So as we find people, we place them on the list, and as units or placements are available, then they get referred to that. And so, for instance, we have a program currently that we have through the city that we work with our agencies, and that's it, and it is long-term, so they can stay in those programs until they get either other options or they want to move on their own. But it is supposed to be long-term permanent housing that has basically the supports and also the financial supports to help them maintain their housing.
Well, this is just fascinating. So now my background is I'm a mother of a seriously mentally ill adult child who's never been offered any of these services. And I'm just very curious, because from my perspective in the community, there is zero housing.
Yeah. If you'd like, Juliana, after the meeting, we can connect you so that we can at least connect you to understand how these resources are accessed, especially people who are in the behavioral health system. Some of us are very familiar with that process, and you probably know it very well. I was going to say, you being a family member, I had a family member in the behavioral health system, so you get to know things, right? But I want to just stay on track here.
Thank you.
On the purpose. So are we in agreement to take out the last sentence and maybe just talk about what housing first, maybe have like housing first and kind of what that is, and explain a little bit about permanent housing. Again, I'm going to come back to Tom. I've always over the years, that's why I feel like I might be outdated, Tom, because I've always used PSH. So there, and the idea around PSH is that it's not just housing, but it's supports, right? So the idea of our purpose is to make recommendations on how to expand permanent supportive housing with a housing first approach. Does that sound good? In the city of Tucson. And then I'm just gonna, I think that's a place to put a period. The permanent housing should be for persons and families overcoming homelessness who may have, and maybe we put the right kind of wording around the conditions. In fact, I'm going to show you something on another slide here soon around who might be the best target populations for these housing. That probably is more current than what is written in this sentence. So when we look at that, I think that's what we can plug in, and then leave it there. But the idea is it's to expand permanent supportive housing. That's our main, I think, should be our main purpose for this subcommittee. But is there anything else besides working to expand permanent supportive housing with a housing first approach? Is there anything else to our purpose that we think is missing here?
I think Terrence.
Oh, Terrence, sorry. You guys, those hands, I am missing them. So I am so sorry.
No worries.
Jump in, Terrence.
So no, not anything to expand it. I was wanting to chime in on the verbiage regarding permanent supportive housing. To me, permanent housing is just a place to live, where when I think permanent supportive housing, it must entail all of those wraparound services which are offered. So when it comes to encouraging residents, the language regarding encouraging them, I guess that's kind of if we're being housing first adherent, that's about as we can encourage, we can entice, we can offer. You told me no today, I can come back tomorrow and ask, hey, change your mind. But because it's not a mandate for their housing, I kind of am in line with encouraging. Pretty sure I could whip out a thesaurus and come up with a better word than encouraging, but it's still the same meaning. But as far as permanent supportive housing, the expectation is that we're not just putting people in housing, that we're providing the services, we're offering these services to help them reach the next plateau, correct?
Right. And honestly, that's what I've always, when we developed, when in the conversations in the commission was around, how do we do more housing for those who are experiencing homelessness? And for me, that's permanent supportive housing. So, and making, because again, it's the key, along again with the housing first approach around that. So that's my stance on that. Tom, you want to
Yeah,
add?
that's I'm so glad we had this conversation, because I'm making an assumption just from the whole commission in that this is a broader housing initiative. But if it's narrow to like, which isn't real narrow, but if it's like, no, really, we are trying to increase permanent supportive housing, yeah, it's a very specific model. It makes sense. I would say just call it what it is. I think somewhere along the line, I made the assumption that this was about housing beyond, this is a broader housing discussion, permanent housing.
Yeah, I'm glad you clarified that, because we do have a different committee that's just around affordable housing, which is that broader topic. But when in this group was really around the idea around those who are unsheltered or sheltered, that really, how do we get more resources to them, because the broader community really needs affordability, but we know when people have additional challenges and trauma and different things that they've gone through, that the supportive services is what keeps them stabilized and successful, right? So, any other comments? Terrence, did you have another one?
I do still have my hand up. So I also thought this was a broader conversation. I thought that we were looking to essentially broaden these services to where really any person we have, even in affordable housing, that might not be in a COC funded program. I thought the goal was still to be able to offer those services, because just because they're not in that COC program doesn't mean they don't need support and assistance.
Well, and that, Terrence, permanent supportive housing is not a COC program, right? Permanent supportive housing can be funded by a variety of sources. And so we're accustomed that a lot of it has been done through the COC, but it doesn't have to be done through the COC. So to me, again, how do we broaden permanent supportive housing that's beyond what we've been able to do? And I'm sorry, Juliana, we're saying COC, that's the continuum of care. That's the planning body that TPCH is. So I apologize, we'll jump into some of these acronyms, but I do think that's my, again, I'm kind of driving this since I'm the chair, but I don't want to be the bully pulpit here and telling you guys how it has to be, but really it has to be about permanent supportive housing. So Liz.
Well, to use the word encourage, I would like to encourage us to consider not only permanent and supportive housing, because that's very specific, and that is kind of like that is the gold medal trophy that everyone is shooting for when they do the coordinated entry screening. And there are a bunch of other housing opportunities for people also who are at risk of homelessness. And I think that is a category of housing that people don't consider, and that's how oftentimes people do get screened into housing. We talked about things that were not just permanent and supportive housing during the last meeting. So I think that I think the housing first model is a good goal, but like I said, I think the specifics are gonna really drag us down. And I think maybe just focusing on the housing first model would be like most beneficial for us so that we're not constrained.
And again, I hear what you're saying, Liz, and I don't want to constrain us, But for me, one of the biggest gaps we have in our system is a lack of permanent supportive housing for those who are homeless, especially those who are chronic and some of those things. So, I think if we can accomplish that, I'm all for making this committee broader to other homeless. But I just feel like the resources are limited. And if we can make the biggest impact for those who are the hardest to house, then we can make some progress in the overall system. But again, this is a subcommittee, so I'm just one voice. Mindy?
I think that like it's very likely that we've already talked about different types of housing that are not just permanent supportive housing. I think it's very likely that it's going to come up because people oftentimes enter permanent and supportive housing from transitional or shelter or things like that. And I think it's just inevitable. Like it's called a continuum for a reason. Like it is part of the continuum.
Mindy?
Thank you. The reason why I don't like that last sentence is mental illness is a medical condition. Substance use disorder is a medical condition. So when we're like putting in mental illness, substance use disorder, and other medical conditions, they are all medical. That was just one piece that I wanted to add. But also, I was just reading this one sentence that is in our minutes. It's under 2, review purpose of the subcommittee. And the last sentence is encouraging residents to increase skills and or find employment, fostering self-sufficiency and improving self-image and supporting recovery and wellness. Says everything that I'm happy hearing.
But then I heard that some of us are okay if we just take it out and just explain that permanent supportive housing has the wraparound services. So I'm in agreement that that's what several people have said, that's really the aspirational piece of what we want for people, but maybe we just take it out and kind of just be a little bit broader. The same way with the conditions. I'll make sure that is not written that way, that it's a little bit broader, just to say, I'll show you guys the next piece in a minute here, but we can talk about that. So what I'm going to do is, based on the comments, I'll take another stab, and during the week, I'll just email it out and let us all again take a little bit more time to look at it and come up with any additional verbiage. And I think what I'm going to do around the comments that Liz, you shared, is to expand permanent supportive housing and other housing options for persons experiencing homelessness. Would that encompass that? Because again, I think this group is around the idea of homelessness, whereas the other subcommittee is the broader low income population. This committee is really around those who are sheltered and unsheltered.
Yeah, I have no objection to that.
And again, I think the housing first is the key here, not the permanent supportive housing. That's what I'm hearing. Okay. So how about I take another stab? I appreciate the comments. Any others? I don't want to leave anybody out. I'm looking for hands. No hands. Okay. All right. So let's do a call to the audience. And this is an opportunity for anyone. Oh, let me look at my agenda again. So this is the time when any member of the public may address the Commission on Equitable and Housing Development. Due to time constraints, the total time allocated for this is 15 minutes. Individuals are allowed 3 minutes each. Due to open meeting law, Commission members cannot discuss topics that are not on the agenda. Items brought up by the public may be considered as an agenda item for a future meeting. So is there any request to speak? Okay. Then we will move on to item number 4, which is the item I said I would share. So before I share it, I want to just bring you guys back to conversation, I think I mentioned it at the last meeting, but when I say we, Housing Community Development Department was given direction by mayor and council to work on a comprehensive plan to address affordable housing in cooperation, in coordination with the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development. So I wanted to, I shared a little bit of what I'm sorry, I can't think of the word. The motion was by Councilmember Ulick, which said we had 90 days. So we're actively working on that. I did think that from the commission and this subcommittee specifically, we could provide a recommendation or a goal around housing. I'm going to say permanent supportive housing, but really around housing for those experiencing homelessness. So I want to share with you something I've drafted and would like to see if you guys want to comment, edit, provide feedback, so that if we come to an agreement, we can submit that to the commission, overall commission, to package it up and put as part of the recommendations for the, and just so you know, we're going from the comprehensive affordable housing plan, and we changed the name to the Housing Affordability Strategic Plan for Tucson. So that's the new word, HAST.
What's the acronym for that one?
HAST. So Housing Affordability Strategic Plan for Tucson. So yeah, thanks to Anne. She always finds a way to make it easy for me to remember. So let me share what, again, this is just a rough draft.
I was literally just thinking today that I wish they had taught me how to remember all these acronyms in school instead of long division.
It's a real skill. And then you put me in a room with another group of people like transportation or other departments and their acronyms. I'm like, I have no idea. So it's a different language. Okay, so this is a potential goal. Again, this was me keeping in mind what we can do from a city perspective, from a department, based on the financial and voucher resources that we have in-house. So I'm just going to read it, and then you guys can ask questions and provide some changes. So starting, yes.
When you start going into acronyms,
Yes.
If it's not spelled out somewhere, could you say what they are out loud? Because I don't understand.
And definitely let me know if I say one and I don't catch myself, okay? And you just said that, so I found a couple here. Okay, good job, Mindy, thank you. So here's a potential goal. Starting in January 2022, open I'll put here, HCD should open or will open funding opportunity to develop one permanent supportive housing project a year for the next 5 years, with a maximum of 50 project-based vouchers or $500,000 in home funds. And that's not for the overall, for the 5 years, that would be annually. So a project could either apply for 50 project-based vouchers or home funds. And our goal would be to fund at least one project a year. That would be for those who are homeless. Again, I'm missing here the housing first, but actually it is down below. So here's what we would require, our minimum threshold requirements for application of gap financing, which is the home funds. That's a HUD program that gives gap financing to make a project viable, or project-based vouchers, which is rental assistance. So the voucher is tied to the unit. A person lives in that unit, they pay their rent based on their income, so 30% of their income. The minimum threshold requirement would be a nonprofit, either the developer or service provider partner must have a nonprofit designation. System coordination, there would need to be a commitment to participating in the coordinated entry system by using the homeless management information system. that way we know with the system coordination, that's how we track information and we know that's how people get referred. Program fidelity, a commitment to using a housing first approach, serving individuals and families who meet HUD's definition of chronically homeless or literally homeless, participating in the coordinated entry system. Second, target population should include people who meet, HUD's dedicated plus eligibility as the priority pool. This includes, and I'm sorry, this is chronically homeless and persons who were chronically homeless but were temporarily housed, and persons with a long-term disability defined as having high severity of service needs by the COC. So remember before I was talking about, we had all the different medical conditions, substance abuse, mental illness, and other disabling conditions. We could replace it with this statement but it's a pretty long statement. And then third, demonstrates the ability to provide appropriate services for target population, and services are provided on site. So maybe I heard earlier appropriate voluntary services. And then development standards commits that the project will include affordability restrictions for 30 years, ensures adequate space for service provision, and project must be developed within 24 months of award. So there might be more to this that you guys can think of. This was something I took from San Diego Housing Commission. So as far as some of the different, I didn't use all of what they had, but this outline I borrowed from them. So I'm putting this out there as for discussion, for comments. And so I'm going to leave it up, but I'm going to try to look for hands. So who wants to, oh, I see Liz and then Tom.
Yeah, so I see a maximum of 50 project-based vouchers. Is there a threshold of units that we're expecting the developer or nonprofit to build? Because I think that should be clearly stated, and possibly allowing for mixed income development. I know that it's services on site, but there are some mixed income developments that are starting to pop up a little bit. Yeah. Also, the person applying for this, would they be able to use these funds for Section 8 renovations or City of Tucson, like El Portal buildings of any kind, or would this be exclusively associated with that nonprofit?
So it sounds so. The second question I'm hearing you say, can it be done for rehab or does it have to be new construction? Is that the question?
Correct.
So I would say it would not be used like on city projects like El Portal and those things that you mentioned, but it could, this could be used for both either rehab and acquisition, rehab, or new construction. Right now, our home funds and project-based vouchers, they don't make a distinction. Regarding the stating the number of units, that's harder to really require, because it definitely depends on the size of the property, whether they're going for 4% or 9% tax credits as far as the size of the project. So it's my recommendation that we don't require a minimum number of units, because each project is going to be very different as far as how many units they can do. It could be that we say that preference will be given to larger projects or projects that that are mixed housing, so that it's not 100%. I mean, some people say we should not do 100% permanent supportive housing. Other people say no, that's the best model, to have 100% of the people in the project to be permanent supportive housing. So there's always going to be some pros and cons to each. But those are my comments on that. So what I'm hearing, we should indicate that the project, we should add that it could be rehab or new construction. Would that suffice, on your comments, Liz?
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate. And then like, I mean, I don't see any exclusions enumerated. And I don't know what would exclude or preclude someone from, being eligible as an applicant. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom?
I think you answered maybe some of my question, which is, so the assumption in this is that the developer is going to have a tax credit or something, and they're going to marry these vouchers to that project or use 500 in gap funding if
Mhm.
it's needed.
Right. And-
Okay,
Yeah, and I really think it should be in one or the other, because both these resources are very expensive. And so, a developer often will know which one they prefer. Some may prefer the project-based vouchers because that's not capital. 500,000 is really the capital to build, whereas the 50 project-based vouchers is more your cash flow, how much rents you're getting to keep it operational. So a lot of developers tend to want the vouchers because they can count on those for the term of the contract, which is often can be anywhere between 15 to 30 years. So that's why I said or on that, but mhm.
the other question I would have is that when you mentioned the rehab, is there an assumption in this that these are new housing units in the community? In other words, could purchase a place that really is in bad shape, but is providing some housing, rehab it, it isn't really adding units? Or is it okay to be improving units essentially by rehabbing and purchasing a property?
What we see on the rehab side, they're typically taking something from market and turning it into a permanent supportive housing. So, or what we see a lot is that buy old hotels and make those into permanent supportive housing. And so you're not necessarily adding new units, but you're changing the purpose of the units where they weren't there before. So if this subcommittee says we really want it to be new construction, we want to bring new units online, we could do that. Or if we see some value in keeping the options open if they choose to rehab.
Yeah, I have nothing to really base an opinion on that either way. I just wanted to understand. Others on this committee may.
Yeah. All right, we'll go to Mindy, and if anyone wants to keep adding to each of the different topics, that's fine. Mindy?
Thank you. I think I have questions more. So first of all, what does HOME? Is that an acronym?
It's actually the name of the program. So it's a HUD program. So what I can put in here, it's called Home Investment Program. It's a
Okay.
HUD funding grant.
Got it. So I'm understanding that the vouchers will pay for the physical space and $500,000 a year for building or rehabbing. And I think that $500,000 in this economy does not go very far at all. If we're
So just so you know, what happens is when developers, if they're doing let's just use the most common funding financing that they do for projects is they do low-income housing tax credit. So a lot of times they'll come up, let's say the project is $11 million. And what we talk about gap financing is really the project needs the funding they get from low-income housing tax credit might be 9 million. And then, but the project total development cost is 11 million. They have to find 2 million to fill the gap. And so cities like, let's use Phoenix as an example, they'll do 3 or 5 $1 million home contributions for each project. For Tucson, we only get about a million, maybe $1.5 million that we can use for gap financing. So to stretch that, we could say 500,000. They may have to go to a couple other financing sources to fill the other missing 1.5 million. but a lot of them will take grants as low as 500,000 to help them fill the gaps. So 500,000, even though it sounds low, it actually, a lot of developers will go for those type of grants, knowing that it helps fill the gaps. And we don't have a lot. So the reason I said 500,000, we might be able to do another project for another 500,000 that is not permanent supportive housing. So my goal is to do 2 to 3 projects with home funds every year is kind of the idea, instead of putting all the money into just one project. Terrence.
Oh, I had a question about that because in the first sentence, it says to develop 1 project per year.
Right.
And I agree 500,000 that's a really small property. We're getting all five units, but they're yours.
No, but yeah, it's not. It's the idea. It's only a small portion of their financing.
Okay, so the actual question that I had was, you had said that essentially the CCNRs, the affordability restrictions, would be for 15 to 30 years. Would it make a difference if it was project-based vouchers as opposed to the HUD the home funds? What the CCNRs would be? Yeah,
so typically home is 20 years. The project-based vouchers, your contract can be as low as 5 years, but when the low-income housing tax credit projects typically are pushing cities, if they do project-based vouchers, to match what they require for whether it's home or the low-income housing tax credits, it's really about 15 years. So, but I've had some that come back and say, we really need the contract to be 30 years. So I think it depends on each project and what the requirements that they're going in with. For instance, a lot of them will get a home grant, but not from us, but from the Department of Housing. Or they have some other, again, Arizona Department of Housing, there's a few other places, some banks, they can get a bunch of different types of loans that will have different affordability terms, time periods, right? So we typically try to match what it is they need to ensure that they are meeting the requirements of their other financing sources. So those are kind of the weeds of doing some of these projects, is understanding and working with the developers around what they need in order to make their projects viable. But
okay,
it
thank
is,
you.
yeah, and the one project means it could be a project of 20 units or it can be a project of 200 units. It's up to the developer to submit. And that's why one of the things on these minimum threshold here, we're just talking about what's the minimum we want, but we are also developing on the other side for the strategic plan is what is the criteria we're going to use for scoring. So some projects may come out scoring higher if they do some of the things you guys are talking about, that it's a project that might have great supportive services, that might be a way to score them higher, or where it's located is near grocery stores. We're going to have a criteria and a scoring sheet that will help us determine which are the best of the projects that would come in for these types of funding proposals to the city. But this, to me, for permanent supportive housing, we're just trying to set the minimum threshold. What does it absolutely have to have for them to submit an application? But the scoring of the applications will have probably higher standards to really give preference to the best projects. Other comments, thoughts? How do you guys feel about the target population? Anyone have any concerns or questions around that? Number 2 under 3.2. Okay. So does this subcommittee feel that this is a goal we should move forward to the commission?
Yes, I'll make a motion.
Okay, thank you, Liz. And Mindy?
I second that motion.
Okay. All in favor of moving this recommendation to the commission, say aye.
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 Okay. Well, thank you, guys. It gives us something to work towards, right? And let's see here. So moving on to the agenda, item number 5. Let's talk about next meeting and any items for future meetings. So we are doing, I believe, Vanessa, we're on the second Thursday of the month, or the second Thursday of the month, which is for November.
Correct, second Thursday of each month.
So the next meeting would be, just for clarification, it would be the 11th. So it would be November 11th at 4 p.m. Mindy, did you have?
I do. It's Veterans Day. Does that conflict with holidays?
Yeah.
Okay.
We are off.
November 11th is Veterans Day?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't realize. that.
Yes.
I
So,
thought it was on Mondays usually.
yeah,
No,
it's
actually,
weird.
it's one of those holidays. It's a fixed date.
It's always on the Thursday. That's weird.
No, it's
Um,
always on the 11th is what's
I'm
weird.
always on the 11th. Thank you. Mindy. I don't know what I'm talking about. It's time for me.
It's
to
getting
go.
late.
Yeah, always on the 11th. Okay, Mindy?
I wanted to talk about an agenda for next.
Oh, yeah. So that, just to finalize, since I'm glad you guys highlighted that's Veterans Day. We can either meet on the 4th or the 18th. Is there, can we get a recommendation?
The 4th is our commission
I think the
meeting,
next,
Oh, thank you.
so the 18th would be the next closest date.
Is anyone unable to do the 18th? Well, then that will be we're moving it for this month due to the holiday. So let's plan for the 18th at 4 p.m. And Mindy, you have the floor.
Thank you. There are some programs I've started researching in Salt Lake City. I've never seen Tom's programs physically. And the 2 programs in Salt Lake City, one is called, it's run by a nonprofit agency. One is called the Other Side Academy, which is for people facing long criminal incarcerations. It's a 30-month commitment. It doesn't fit into what we're talking about, but it's one of their programs. They do not accept individuals with a history of that are being charged with pedophilia, arson, or dual diagnosis. But they are working on starting another program called the Other Side Villages, which is I think I may have sent you a copy of that, Liz. It is a incredible concept of community, of circular dwelling, individual housing, community space. And I have been made aware of a plot of land that may be for sale, 7 to 8 acres, but due to the zoning restrictions of the area, the person was not able to complete their dream for it. So I have 2 kinds of questions. One is, I would like the permission, I would like to contact the Other Side Academy Villages, the CEO. I have their CEO and their founders email. I believe in looking at models that are working rather than recreating necessarily with our own creativity. So Liz, I was wondering if you would be interested in contacting them to see if they would share with you.
Okay. Yeah, we can have them do a presentation if you like for this committee.
That would be phenomenal. And then I would like to see us do that model here.
Okay. Well, we can definitely start with learning about it. So
Yeah.
what I'll do, if you have any information on that, resend it to me.
I will give you their emails. Yes, their
Okay.
emails. I think it would be better from you than from me.
Okay.
I don't have a brain that lasts very long. So
I might be close behind you. So
So that would be,
Liz, can I, oh, I'm sorry.
jump
Sorry,
in.
Mindy, I thought you were, I didn't mean to talk over you.
I'm done.
I think
Thank
she's
you,
done.
Liz. Thank you, everybody.
Can I bring up an agenda item?
Yes.
I know that City of Tucson now has a landlord outreach program. I think it would be really beneficial to hear from that program if they're at the point of giving presentations and speaking to subcommittees and that sort of thing. I think all of us would benefit as using that as a framework.
Okay. And I feel kind of bad right now because I didn't really give Brandy too much of a platform here. But I'd really like to add for the agendas for Brandy to come back to us and kind of talk about what she's going to be working on. And Brandy is wanting to do basically like a listening session to share what she's doing and get feedback. And I think this group would be great for that. But Brandy, you want to talk a little bit about just what your position's about? I mean, it has the title Housing First in it. So do you want to share anything or about maybe coming back? What do you think?
Yeah, I would like to do that, a listening session, to get some feedback about where we're going with things. We're going to start collaborating with agencies of the community, other government agencies, counties, state, other collaborators to get things moving, working with Homeless Protocol, putting all of those things together. We also had some discussion about homeless work program at one point, Tom. We know you had that up, so and combining that into what we're doing, as well as ADOT, the prison program where people come out and work in the community. So there's all kinds of things in the fire. Of course, this is my first week, so we're going to get the ball rolling on a lot of that, and it all centers around housing first and what that means, and getting people wraparound services that will lead them towards self-reliancy. So,
right. And I will say the impetus or the reason that this position was created by the mayor and the council back in January 2019 was that we need to do a lot more. And I'm going to credit Tom for his work with his board and really trying to get the community to understand what Housing First is and moving us as a community towards that. So this position really is a result of all that work, so that we can find new ways to getting people who really are, again, in the worst possible positions in life, where they don't have a roof of their own and have the resources. So Brandy's going to be working around how to really move that whole housing first. How do we get more resources so that we can make homelessness a thing of the past for as many people as we can, and putting people on a good path forward. So Brandy will be part of this, and also will be sharing with us as we learn whatever new initiatives and efforts that she's working on. And I should say all of us are working on, because I think it's going to take all of us to really make a difference and move the needle. So thank you, Brandy. I put you on the spot,
absolutely.
but you're always good at that.
Thanks.
Any other agenda items? Future agenda items? We may ask Terrence to talk here soon, and Tom, share models that you guys are doing. I think it's worth just understanding what we have in our community. Last week we had Jody talk about what the programs we're doing here at the city, but I really think it's helpful if we can know what other our own organizations and providers are doing. So if you guys are good, maybe we'll just every meeting have a different project highlighted, and we'll schedule those out.
I'm good. You can put me on the next one if you want to.
Oh, great.
I'll give you a quick 2-penny tour. No promises it's going to be a good presentation, but I'll do a presentation.
Yeah. We'll take mediocre, but I have a feeling you will not be doing a mediocre.
I had a friend who used to play in a band and he would be tuning up forever. And then he would just say, well, I can promise it'll be loud. That's all I can give you.
We don't need any bells and whistles. We just
All
want,
right.
we want good info and again, I'm such a admirer of all of you that do this work or have done this work. Juliana, as I said, being a fellow family member, someone who's really had, a lot of struggles, you're a hero when you're advocating for those, whether it's your family or for other people. All of you serving on this commission are in that position that I admire and thank for all your good work. Well, if you guys are good, I think we've reached the end of our agenda. Any other items for the next meeting? If not, I will adjourn this meeting. You good with that? Awesome. Thank you again for your time, everyone. Have a great day.
You
Bye,
too.
everybody.
You would.
Bye.